In the early 2000s, Camron wasn't just a rapper, he was Harlem, known for pink furs, Lamborghini flexes, and Dipset dominance. He moved like a king through New York streets and studios alike. But when he stepped onto the set of Paid in Full, Cam took on a role that would shadow him long after the credits rolled. As Rico, a character based on a real-life DC drug kingpin, Alpo Martinez, Cam embodied the ultimate street villain. Fast-talking, flashy, fatally disloyal, the role was iconic. But for some, it hit too close to home. Get shot every day, B. That wasn't just a line from the movie. It became a prophecy. On October 23, 2005, during Howard University's homecoming weekend, Camron was shot 3 times in his Lamborghini Gallardo while stopped at a light in downtown D.C. The rumors swirled. Was it a carjacking gone wrong? A warning shot from a D.C. street figure still bitter over Paid in Full? Or was it deeper, tied to beefs, jealousy, or just the dangers of fame when you blur the line between art and life? The streets had questions, the blogs had theories, but Camron, he drove himself to the hospital, middle fingers up. And even then, some said it wasn't just Cam who got shot, it was Rico. Because in DC, Paid in Full wasn't just a movie, it was a memory, it was a myth, and it was murder. This is the story of a Harlem rapper who played a DC legend and nearly paid the ultimate price. Before he was Killa Cam, he was just Cameron Giles from 140th and Lenox. Harlem-bred basketball star turned rapper, Cam was raised in the fire, where style, slang, and survival all lived on the same block. In the early 90s, he was rhyming next to legends Big L, Mace, and McGruff. The Children of the Corn is what they called themselves. But after Big L's death in 1999, Cam had to reinvent himself. And that reinvention became the Dipset dynasty. Camron wasn't just rapping anymore. He was running uptown. Loud, unfiltered, unapologetic, a pink mink in a room full of khakis. A businessman in Timberlands. By 2002, Dipset was more than a crew. It was a movement. Jim Jones, Joel Santana, Freaky Zeke. Rockefeller gave him a platform, but Harlem gave him the pressure. And when Camron walked into the audition room for Paid in Full, he didn't just read the lines, he was the lines. He was cast as Rico, the loudest, slickest, most dangerous man in the room, based on Alpo Martinez, a notorious DC and Harlem drug lord turned government informant. The role wasn't just dramatic, it was radioactive. In Harlem, Alpo was feared. In DC, he was hated. And now Camron, a real Harlem figure, was stepping into those shoes. For the culture, it was movie magic. For the streets, it was a loaded gun. And some say, from the very moment Paid in Full dropped, the countdown to that red light shooting had already begun. In 2002, Paid in Full hit theaters. It wasn't just another hood classic, it was a mirror, held up to Harlem and DC at the same time. And at the center of it all, Camron is Rico, a character based on one of the most polarizing men in street history, Alpo Martinez. To Harlem, Alpo was a flashy, fearless hustler, known for throwing money and driving motorcycles down Lenox in broad daylight. But to DC, he was a rat, the man who brought New York business to their streets and death along with it. In the late 1980s, Alpo expanded his empire from Harlem to DC, allegedly turning the city's drug game upside down. Bodies dropped, wars erupted. By the early 90s, Alpo was facing multiple murder charges, including the infamous killing of his own friend, Rich Porter. And when the pressure hit, Alpo cooperated with the feds. He walked away from a potential death sentence. In DC, that name still burns. Camron played Rico a little too well. His laugh, his arrogance, the betrayal, it all felt too real for those who lived it, especially in Washington, D.C., where some people weren't watching Paid in Full for entertainment. They were watching it like a documentary. And to them, Cam didn't just portray Alpo, he became Alpo. Alpo might have been off the streets, but his legend wasn't. And in some corners of DC, playing a man responsible for so much pain and doing it so convincingly was almost like spitting in a wound. Word spread fast. Cam from Harlem out here making money off Alpo's story. Jealousy, grudges, misunderstandings. It didn't matter that Cam was just an actor. In the streets, there's no such thing. October 23rd, 2005. Howard University homecoming in Washington, D.C. Camron just performed for the students and was riding through the city late at night. He was cruising in his signature sky blue Lamborghini Gallardo, iced out in over $200,000 worth of diamonds. Then it hit. Gunfire. 3 shots, 2 in his arms, 1 grazing his back, while he was stopped at the red light at New York and New Jersey Ave Northwest.
What happened was they told me to give up the car, and I looked at him like he was stupid, pulled off, and then he started shooting.
As Camron drove off in his Lamborghini sports car down this Washington, D.C. street, he was shot twice in the arms. He was treated and released from Howard University Hospital. And tonight, after landing back here in Teterboro, he showed us the bullet hole still clearly visible in his left arm. But he says he is okay.
And me, I'm fine. I'm excellent, man. It was great.
Miraculously, he drove himself to Howard University Hospital, determined to stay alive and still bold to the core with Harlem pride intact. He declared, "My album comes out November 22nd. They miss." The official story, a botched carjacking. But the streets talk, and the streets weren't buying it. Years later, Dame Dash, producer of Paid in Full, claimed the shooting was over Cam's portrayal of Rico. On All the Smoke, he shared that Cam once refused a reshoot line referencing DC, saying something akin to DC people don't like New York people, and New York dudes don't like DC dudes. But he was pushed to do it anyway, and that line may have drawn fire. Dame Dash said at the time, he didn't realize the risk. He recalls Cam telling him, "Yo, bro, I got shot over that role." He even pulled him off the next role, thinking the character had real-life consequences. Cam has remained tight-lipped on details, a self-imposed code of the street ethics. In a 2007 60 Minutes interview, he said he wouldn't cooperate with police because in his world, helping the police makes you a bigger target. There's no confirmed link between Rico's portrayal and the shooting, but the timing, the context, the lines, it all paints a darker picture. It's a dark irony. Cam played Rico, a man who betrays his friends and flees. A man based on Alpo Martinez, a real DC drug lord who turned informant. And years later, Cam got shot, just miles from where Alpo's name still echoes. Was it revenge? A message? A mistaken moment? Cam never says, but the danger was real. Rico was fiction, but in the streets, fiction can bleed into reality. Camron wasn't supposed to bounce back. Not after getting shot in both arms. Not after losing trust in his own circle. But when the doctors cleared him, he walked out the hospital, wrapped in gauze, dipped in pink, a Harlem king. A survivor. Cam didn't just live, he launched. Even years later, the Rico rumors never fully left him. Some saw him as a symbol of betrayal, others of resilience. But in Cam's mind, loyalty had a code. Survive, shine, and never snitch. He never told police who shot him. He never changed up his story. And he never let the pain become weakness. While the industry debated his silence, Cam turned the streets into an empire. Diplomats dropped More Than Music Volume 1. Cam signed J.R. Ryder, Hell Rell, and 40 Cal. His solo album, Killa Season, debuted in the top 5 on Billboard. And in 2006, he dropped a film by the same name, directed, written, and funded by himself. To this day, the line between Camron and Rico still blurs. He didn't play the villain, he embodied one. But while Alpo Martinez, the real-life Rico, was gunned down in Harlem in 2021, Cam's still walking, still building, still talking slick in pink. They tried to turn a role into a sentence. They tried to write Cam off as Rico, but Harlem wrote him back in as a legend. Camron didn't just survive the streets, he outgrew them. By the late 2010s, the Dipset wave had slowed down, but Cam, he evolved. From viral skits to real estate, sports commentary to herbal supplements, Killa Cam pivoted into every bag with Harlem Hustle. In 2023, Camron and Mace did the unthinkable, turned Harlem gossip into media gold. It Is What It Is wasn't just funny, it was smart, ruthless, and honest. It gave Cam a new lane and reminded the world he'd never lost a step. Unlike Rico, Cam never had to betray his people to win. He stayed solid, took his hits, came back louder. To Harlem, he's not a character, he's culture. 20 years after Paid in Full made him Rico, Camron is still rewriting the script, still getting checks, still owning his image. And this time, he's not just surviving the movie, he's directing the sequel. Camron played Rico so well, the streets forgot it was just a role. But over the years, the man behind the movie proved something the character never could: loyalty, longevity, and leadership. He didn't rat, he didn't fold, he rebuilt. Cam turned pain into power and a near-death moment into a decades-long legacy. They tried to box him in as a villain, but Camron rewrote the ending and made himself the hero. And in the end, after all that history and all the things that took place, Rico died in the movie. Cam still running the show.